2024, and we are live with an audience as well as some goals and objective for a Digital World Town Hall meeting today. Thank you for, we don't want to push that button. We want to push this button. Thank you for taking the time and checking in, where we basically report out based upon some of the things that have happened within the digital world, as well as maybe society and some of the advancements. We'll do that in the prior part of the meeting. And then at the end, we will do general Q&A. We'll start today with an opening prayer by Richard and a closing prayer by Susan. We're joined by co-hosts with Elle and Wally. We're grateful for their attendance and just dedication over the years, even though I'm not the simplest one to stay focused with, and I create a lot of noise, so to speak. But I just love who they are and their stability. Kind of two solid legs that we can all stand on. This is a private membership association, and as a reminder, some of the things that we talk about may be forward-looking. For those that need reminding, there are secret combinations out there in the world. This last week, one of the biggest ones that I've kind of seen pop its face is, well, I won't even talk about war and conflicts just yet, but it's interesting to see how some of these ecosystems after the elections have done certain things. But as a reminder, different organizations that usually work together behind the scenes in secret combinations, whether it's in pharma, whether it's in insurance, whether it's in media, whether it's in tech or health. And then what they do is they try and go in to different governments and take them over. Now, this may sound like a foreign concept, but we've been talking about this for many, many, many years. Same slide, same presentation, and the same way to solve it. So as we have private things and public things that are happening out there in the world, we're starting to see media outlets that will actually start speaking more truth. You know, this last week, we had a couple tweets that basically said, you are the news. So people are the news when they go on to different platforms such as X, and they post what's going on. And then some of the things that are going on right now, MSNBC being potentially acquired, at least that's a dialogue. I don't know if there's anything valid about it. But the point is media can change a perspective from private to public or vice versa. And that's one of the things that I personally really misread over the last decade, is the power of public relations and marketing as it relates directly or indirectly to media. And so the ability for private and public organizations to work together to take over different environments. One of the things that I think we've seen this last month, so again, today is the 24th of November, the same month that we had an election where President Trump was reelected. And, you know, for those of you that there were predictions, I'll get into those in a second, but we talk about in the digital world how decentralization and specifically derived keys within decentralization can actually free humanity. And a lot of people may talk about, well, Bitcoin, blockchain, cryptography, but specifically the use of decentralized systems in how people can then govern themselves. So instead of having governments that control us as individuals, using technology in an intelligent way where people can govern themselves. I think trust can increase, costs can be lower, and progress can be faster. The way that this is done is through derived keys that come off of a master private key, which is just 12 words that links with an individual, whether with their finger or their face. And then they basically have different derived keys. So it's a good way to explain it is a rotating system that it ties all the way back to an individual. So let's say you went and got a bank account number, and then whenever you got another type of thing, let's say a wallet or an account, maybe it's a social account or an email account or a payment account or photos, all of those use different derived keys, but they're tied to the master key that uses what's called key rotation. For instance, today we go get credit cards, and then every couple of years we have to get a new credit card because we give the private and public key out with the credit card. It basically is fixing the banking system, fixing the credit card system, fixing the payment system. But the unique thing that the digital world does is it fixes it starting with identity. And those 12 words tied to the individual is what is really important. By the way, this is the Thanksgiving week. So we are literally just a couple ways, I don't know, 48 hours away from Gobble Gobble Day. I hope everyone has family close and it is a positive time of year, even though we're talking about nuclear war in society. Like literally every news channel that historically has tried to talk about truth. I talked to President or or General Flynn, who is just a wonderful man. His son and I, he actually runs a Clearphone, but his wife, himself, and his son and his wife, they usually go to these events that we would do in different parts of the U.S. with different states. They've actually stopped. This is the last month that they were doing them over the last 2.5, almost 3 years. And I've spent a lot of time with this individual, and he's driven by true and correct principles, not corruption. And so he's one of the biggest underscore 3 times is the threat of nuclear war is as high as it's ever been. The threat in targeting around what's potentially going to transpire. They're talking about Kamala, basically, or Kamala, or whatever Mrs. Harris's name is, over in Hawaii, taking a break, and possibly, the current Biden basically being taken out, replaced with her. And I don't know where the truth is or what the future is as it relates to this. What I do know is we all have choice. And I think being thankful and having gratitude is one of the most important choices that we can actually make. It'll lead to an element of positivity that we just haven't seen in the world. So I'd like to kick off real quick with prayer, which I think does a large portion of gratitude. And Richard, if you would be so kind to get us started there, especially because we're talking about brutal realities of life, that would be greatly appreciated. So.
Sure.
Thank you.
Our Heavenly Father, we thank Thee for the many, many bounteous blessings we receive at Thy hand. We thank Thee for this special week of Thanksgiving, that we might have an attitude of gratitude always and radiate that to all with whom we come in contact. We thank Thee for all that we have and the freedoms that we enjoy, and pray for Thy help to go forward, to make the progress needed to have our freedoms even more appropriately and broadly across the world. We express our gratitude and pray for Thy help in this meeting. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen. I don't know about you, but sometimes in these times of years when we can actually be around loved ones, specifically loved ones like you, Richard, the generation that we rely on, especially from my generation, we rely on the wisdom of the prior generation, so to speak. And I would just try and underscore the importance of time that we have to spend with that generation. So I hope that we're all able to spend time with family, especially those that gave us life or mentors or teaching us. And yeah, so I know this may be a bleak topic around nuclear war, but it's interesting to see the noise that's going on. But I don't think we should focus on it. I don't think we should focus on even a prediction that was made before President Trump got in, that a prediction that Mrs. Harris will stay in the White House even though President Trump receives more real votes. So, he actually won. She conceded, she walked away, but it's interesting, the quiet before the transition and or the storm. So we'll see what happens. All I would say is as many prayers as we can throw out there that things can transition, and then the new individuals in power, that they will continue to look to our Creator, that we can actually do things that are true and correct. It's interesting, we brought up a topic around how the systems of the digital world can actually, through decentralization, can actually solve a lot of these centralized issues, whether they're costs or ownership or choice or freedom or accountability or voting or identity or records. It's interesting to see how there really can be a big difference. This is one thing around an executive order. We're seeing a lot of things that are starting to pop. This is something that this last week we've been able to make a lot of advancements on, which is American life, which ties to the American Republic, which hopefully can be adopted based upon the new leadership that is put in. So that's the goal. On the left, you can see that there's a dollar, a card, and a coin as a based asset, and then you can pull in other assets. Again, it already touches, you can already hold Bitcoin-based assets, Ethereum-based assets. There's a lot of other systems that are out there. I won't name all of them, but in the end, you'll see them all consolidating and then working together. It's kind of like a roll-up strategy or consolidation strategy on market adoptions. The history of it basically have kind of touched in these different areas that we look at. There's in addition to Ripple spawning, so on the left, spawning off Ethereum, they also spawned off. Looks like we're getting some feedback. We'll go ahead and see if we can figure out what's going on there. Welcome, Billy. We're getting some feedback on you, bud. You can mute, or I can do it for you. There you go. All good. It's great to have you here. So we were just going through a real quick report out, and we started with basically different. Whoa. There we go. Started with different chains, which we're going to circle back around on this topic and talk about potentials that we'll also be working with. But in the simplicity of this world, we'll end up consolidating. When we talk about consolidation, I want to just throw out there a union within the Americas. And I'm just going to throw this out, and then I'm going to talk about some of the headlines that have gone on. So imagine South America, North America coming together. So that would include, a lot of different ecosystems, but let's just take the top three that are the largest: Canada, Mexico, and the United States of America. Let's look at what happened this last week where, basically there's dialogue. I don't know the details. I wasn't on the calls and not even following the media, but this is talking about how Canada and Mexico, there's possible tariffs. This is talking about particularly how there's going to be a consequence with tariffs between Mexico and the US, coming from Mexico back to the US. This is talking about Canada, Mexico, and China all together around tariffs and imposed 25% coming January 20th. So a lot of different things that are going on. Do I think is this just noise? Is this something we need to be aware of? In the end, commerce is actually where control starts and ends. Wars are fought based upon these types of things. People think about a petrodollar as actually how wars can be fought and won. Well, it goes so much further than that. It's around financial transactions. It's around the individuals. It's around the ability to have assets that move around. We'll talk about some of those assets. One of the biggest topics that is tied to some of the things that we're working on right now, for those that were on prior calls, we're working on building. And actually in Florida, there was an approval that was given to donate 30 acres of land to build a manufacturing facility that will build high-end tech devices. Not necessarily the memory, which we can actually do here out of Utah, and also there's some topics around EMP proof, not only servers, routers, switches, firewalls, but also potentially phones that have capabilities to tie to certain things. Now, they work off of crystals and frequencies and bands, but that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is having componentry and assembly move to the United States of America, where it historically has been done in other parts of the world. Namely, you would have components such as memory, CPU, disk, camera, mics, sensors, etc., all from different parts of the world: Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and China, amongst others, that would then do assembly in China, Vietnam, started in India with some pretty material things as well. But you're going to see some of this moving to the United States. The other thing that you're seeing, I don't know if you're paying attention, is actually a new phone that we will be launching this next week. So I'd like to go through a little bit about that. I'm going to jump to this slide here. I hope you're as excited about it. Go ahead.
Are you sharing your screen?
Yeah. Are you guys not seeing it? I'll do it again real fast. Have you guys not seen any of that? Wow.
No, sir.
Wow, wow, wow. Come on, moderators. You gotta keep me straight on these things. So let's go back over here. So this is a big
Beautiful.
deal. This is a big deal. So imagine a new type of phone that is connected to satellite to cellular, and the satellite and the cellular comes within a paid subscription built into the phone. And then they're also connected to other devices. So these things are focused on decentralized systems. So the identity, the authentication. Imagine logging into some of your devices with just a scan. Imagine logging into social platforms and validating who you are and even where you are with a scan. Imagine taking the power of what ClearOS server, ClearOS mobile, and all the apps combined into a system based upon use cases that are mass adopted, even bigger than what the Clear phones are. So things that will compete and rival all day long with the Apples and the Googles of the world. Imagine integrating these types of systems with things that we already work with within society around registration, certification, and even subscriptions or permitting. Imagine decentralized systems where people can actually get their own identity. So for those that don't believe, go ahead and scan these types of things. You can, for those that are listening or playing along, you can just grab any kind of camera and use any kind of normal QR code scanner and just scan the QR code, and it'll pull up exactly what I'm talking about. So based upon the jurisdiction, you can actually see a vehicle, you can see registration, you can see who can drive it. Is it insured? Is it financed? Is it stolen? All with a simple scan, but that's not going to work from the cameras on the side of the road, but it'll work from any of the individuals that actually want to see it. Now, you could say, well, is that somebody that's parked behind me? Is that somebody that's just on the side? So in India, that's a common thing. You can actually be sitting behind a license plate in a stoplight and actually get the number, put it into a website, and see what their mobile number is and what their address is. And they're supposedly supposed to keep those up to date. Now, the question is this something that is a human right to have privacy? And then where does that privacy start and end? And with these types of systems, the individual's name is never disclosed. And that's the difference. We can operate in the real world. Everyone can see what happens, but the individual's identity is private. Their name is private. Their relationships and connections are private, which we've got to put a turn and a shift. Imagine that digital world meeting into the physical world, and it's not just with cars and automobiles, but it's connectivity, not just cellular, satellite, Wi-Fi, voice over IP, voice over Wi-Fi, but it's also configured, designed, assembled, and made here in the United States of America, and working with other parts of the world. Maybe it's New Zealand. Maybe there's other key parts within India that certain things happen. So we're talking about a solid phone, good CPU, memory, disk, screens, batteries. But the unique part of it is you can actually grab it. Not for those that are used to Clear phones, you're used to getting the service and the phone can be combined. But imagine you actually link it into a new way to actually own automobiles, and how those automobiles can actually be tied to payments within a digital payment system. So digital US dollars is a new type of system that can pay in real time. Now, one of the things that's going to be interesting is I believe that Ripple, along with other assets, will actually tie into this new financial system, the FedNow system, within the first part of next year. And when that happens, these types of payment systems actually have to have real backing, real stability, and real availability, which we'll talk a lot about. So imagine an RSVP capability to tie this. And hopefully by the time we connect next week, we'll actually be able to get you the URL. If you're smart, you can already figure it out. But it's tied to a reputation that is actually yours. You own it, you control it, you manage it, and the rest of the world can actually tie to it. Imagine if you can actually tie your centralized identity and credit system to a decentralized world, get it validated and digitally notarized to be able to tie into this new system. Think about taking all the work that has been done with ClearOS Mobile and tying that into a system, kind of like what you're looking at here. So with that being said, let me see if I can still move around here. Here's some of the specifications. This is one of 3 models, so there'll actually be other models that will come out. There will actually be a Tesla Life application along with xLife, along with a couple other life-based apps that will be tied into these different environments and supported by the Clear companies. So there's a lot of work to happen behind the scenes, but that is one of the biggest announcements that I wanted to just kind of bring up. The rest of them are going to be tied over to what we're looking at here within the digital world and some additional technologies for developers. So this is also in development. The back end, I mentioned that we kind of did a massive test, and it took a heck of a lot longer than I anticipated. It's actually taken almost 3 weeks to do a full 100% decimation. So nothing works, everything's offline, and then rebuilding it and watching. It's not just like you do a backup again. You basically literally have to rebuild and resync the whole system worldwide and all transactions worldwide for many, many years. Whoever just came in, if you could mute, that would be greatly appreciated. So basically, think about this type of a system that actually well, I shouldn't even go here, that actually starts the development side of it. One of the things I'd like to also discuss is organizations working with the digital world to be able to actually jump into the future. I won't be specific, but that's one of the topics that we'll be discussing. There's been some outages that we should probably go through, and also some rebuilding. So for those that are not aware, this is kind of how we manage some of the back-end systems, lots of different systems. But for those that are on docs at ClearOS and forms at ClearOS, those are probably the hottest topics currently. And that's about it there. You already are aware of the X phone and some of the progress that's being made there. We're about 35% of the way to goal there. This is the American country. This is the Mexican country and some of the services that are built around it. And then also making progress on the Ethiopian environment. That is one thing here. I'll pull up some, let's see if I've got some other screenshots that we can walk through. This is some of the American stuff. So you can kind of see the progress here. And again, these will tie into Ethereum-based asset, Ripple-based asset, and Bitcoin-based assets. So which are part of the cores. There's also some dialogue that started with possibly some Tron-based assets that will actually tie into these ecosystems. And then these are some of the other screens within the backend developer tools as well. So these have actually been here before, but we're going through literally a process of rebuilding and understanding the process around documentation. A lot of this ties to future generations having to pick this up and do it without us in the middle of it. So with that being said, I will stop talking and blabbing, because some of the stuff that we just went through, there's some pretty big topics in there. But other thoughts, maybe things that are going on in the world, or thoughts or comments or feedback that anyone would like to bring up, the time is yours.
Hey, Michael.
Hi.
Just one little comment on the Tesla phone. Would that be something that if you brought a Tesla car, it would come with the phone?
So we're actually wrapping, now this may sound crazy, but we're actually going to raise a ton of money to buy a ton of cars and actually finance those cars over a 10+ year period instead of a 5 to 7 year period, because these electric vehicles are lasting a lot longer. And then we will actually offer a monthly fee. So I don't know if you saw, let's see, you probably saw here where you can actually subscribe to the phone. You can also subscribe to the vehicle. Now, it's not a lease. It's not a purchase. They actually just say, hey, we want this vehicle for this time, and it's a longer period of time. So it's a long-term commitment, so to speak. And then it'll combine maintenance, warranty, possibly insurance. And insurance is a whole nother conversation which we're actually working with. Let's see if I can find. Where did it go? Oh, it's right here. We're actually working with a couple jurisdictions around legislation to approve services that will tie to insurance that can actually be combined with banking and some other title and digital notary processes to actually enable the combination of insurance, finance, and payments, as well as the maintenance and the warranty, all built into a monthly payment. So let's say that you can purchase a phone for $69, and then you can purchase a Tesla that actually has an integrated phone and integrated payments for, let's say, $199. So literally for less than $300, you can get a vehicle that's integrated with a phone that actually has a new type of reputation-based system where the individual is linking from the existing centralized system into a decentralized system that they can actually manage their reputation and data. So that's really why we're trying to tie it together, because we believe that not only the phone is one of the biggest listening devices and surveillance devices that we pay for and then give away our data, but the car is too. So imagine if Tesla were willing to actually work with the digital world and allow their data to stream onto these phones or onto the decentralized storage from the automobile in addition to the phone. So we already know that voice, signal-based messages with clear signal, photos, text messages, all of these systems can actually have apps that tie to decentralized storage where the individual owns the data instead of Apple and Google owning the data. But imagine your vehicle, all of the data, heuristics, and it's usually just surveillance-based data. We're not talking about, intellectual property around AI and those types of things, which one could argue who the owner is. But in the end, I believe that some of the things that Tesla and Elon and others are doing, they will hopefully they will be good stewards over that data. But the data around privacy and, what's said in the cars, what's happened with accidents, is all that stuff should be owned by the individual. And through a private membership association with a subscription fee, the goal is to transfer that asset over to the individual. Like when you get a Clear phone or a Tesla phone, you actually do a scan that transfers the legal ownership of that to you. So even if there is a subpoena that goes to a centralized system, one, the data that can't be accessed because it's encrypted and the individual is the one that owns the keys. Those are those master private keys, and that's why that's so important. But imagine the phone and the automobile linking together. And in the future, it may not just be Tesla, which is a bigger conversation. There's no reason why this can't happen with other auto manufacturers. But I believe that the intent behind Tesla and some of the purposes there are true and correct principles, and hopefully we can see that as things unfold. So did that answer your question, Becca?
Yes, Michael, thank you.
Okay. Other thoughts or comments or feedback? Margaret, it is so good to see you in here. Anyone else? Any thoughts on what you just saw? A week's worth of work? Lots going on?
I can, if no one else has anything to say, I can just quickly mention what I mentioned before the meeting about Australia.
Yeah.
So Australia has a national blockchain roadmap, and for the last 6 years, I've been following it and pitching here and there on some of the chains in our supply chains. And currently, at the moment, I'm looking at some latest government initiatives. And I did just want to say that Australia are committed to the potential of decentralized autonomous organizations and the reviewing of the taxation and digital transactions of our assets. So I think probably 2025 and 2026, Michael, it might be something that we have to apply for. But that was something that I've been looking at the moment to seeing how we can continue our innovation growth and our business continuity.
That's interesting. Let's let me show you the process how it works within, let's say, the American Republic ecosystem. So a user would open the Life app on their phone, Tesla Life, X Life, Clear Life, Tuvalu Life, Fiji Life, American Life, any of them, but they only can use one. So it literally can only be installed one time. They come in and they would literally be able to go to organizations, businesses, create a business. Like this is how you actually register a business. You know how you said they have to actually get approved? This enables a derived key to actually, from a scan, 5-factor authentication, you'll notice that this is actually a key that is based upon a unique identifier for this corporation. So let's say we want to create a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization, or a normal business or company. What do you want to call it, Becca? Becca Co?
Yeah, why not?
Find a logo for your new business. Which one do you like? That one?
Oh, there's so many to choose from. Just the black one will be fine.
Okay. Let's just do this simple one right
Or
here.
maybe the little love heart one.
Let's do this little guy right here. Oh, you want, okay, let's do that as an asset. We'll grab that as an asset and pull it down. I'm literally going to show people real time how easy this is to actually make it become a reality. And I'm just screenshotting some of these things. We'll pull them down. Where did we do it? We did it in America. So we're going to add a logo for the actual company. So it'll be, let's do the first one. And then, so we've literally just created a decentralized autonomous organization called Becca Co. Okay. The public view of it looks like this. So you can see it's within the American Republic here. And this is an organization. So this particular one is a company that is a decentralized autonomous organization, which you can see here. This is a unique identifier. This here is actually an incorporation doc, which you can see is a certificate of incorporation. You can actually get a federal employer identification number, and that just doesn't happen with US-based countries. You could do it with Mexico and get a federal employer identification number from the United States to there. You can see the digital manager. Let's say I wanted to add you. You could scan this, or you could actually, within this system, we could come down to managers and add you with an email address or with a scan as a managing member that would actually help to run this. And let's say that you wanted to create products. Let's say that, let's say we're going to create and create a heart. And let's say that this is an asset, a coin, a dollar, a reward. Let's say that these are rewards that you're going to give out. We don't need to peg it to a particular currency, but if you wanted to, you could if there was a value to it. And then these are, we're going to go ahead and do the same thing we did before. So this is how the actual asset will be dropped onto a device. So we have to actually put in a quantity of how many are authorized. So let's say there's just 100 hearts, and there's going to only issue, let's say, 50 of those 100 hearts. We can lock it so they can't issue more. So that would actually need to go up to 100 or you'll lose them. But we're going to go ahead and, what did I do wrong? Digital currency field, I can't do that. So now when I uncheck it, it's going to go ahead and go. So what we just did was we've literally, I'm going to come back in and view this page again. So in Australia, imagine if they adopted this. You basically create a company. That company has assets, has members, has owners. And as this asset actually gets dropped down, so if we come back over here, we can see that this asset has actually not been distributed. So it actually hasn't been sent down. If I go ahead and scan this with a wallet, it'll actually drop that asset onto the wallet, and then I can send it around, or you could send it around as an asset. That's a digital asset. You could tie it to a physical element through digital titling and notarization, which replaces the current systems. When people really understand the maturity and massive abilities of what we're talking about here, I believe countries just like Australia or Mexico or Ethiopia or the Hawaiian ecosystem, they can literally start gathering companies that actually want to go there. And some of the things that we'll talk about are companies that maybe they're private, maybe they need a different jurisdiction, maybe they need to be able to assemble or authorize or have a different type of approach to the market. And they also want massive adoption, massive loyalty with customers, and massive value. Just stay tuned and we'll go through elements of that in the future. But the question is, do people inside of Australia get the same level of maturity of what you see here? So in other words, I as an individual can actually validate that I own this, but for people to verify who I am, they have to request it, and I have to allow them to actually see who I am. So that this privacy thing is what I would question if Australia is going to do. I would actually bet they're not going to. Why? Because I believe that any of the Commonwealth countries, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, they are all a part of a secret combination that is actually doing the opposite to enslave and control people. So they can call it a decentralized autonomous organization, but this side of it, it's not autonomous or decentralized if the identity of the person is actually known from day one. So in other words, they're centralizing decentralization if they don't allow that. So it'd be interesting to see you come back and report out as you see this unfolding within Australia, to see that become a reality. So any other thoughts? I know we have people from all those different jurisdictions on. Feedback? We got a quiet crew today. Jay, it's good to have you. I miss you. You're always welcome, and hope you're having a wonderful Thanksgiving in your part of the world. Any thoughts or feedback? I don't know if everyone was able to see some of that, but either way.
Thanks for showing that, Michael. That was awesome.
You're welcome.
I understand. Yeah.
You're welcome. Any other thoughts? If not, we'll wrap up and get you onto your Turkey Day. I guess we're 2 days away from it.
Really amazing. Thank you.
You're welcome, Richard. It's always good to have you on. Is there any observations that you have coming at it from your history and your forte? You know, for those that are not aware, Richard basically is a pioneer in identity and the future, the historical systems, which were originally, he helped build the policy for HIPAA, Health Information and Portability and Privacy Act, that actually did what we're doing. What we're talking about here is what his policy created. How many years ago, Richard? Like 40 years ago?
Almost 30 years ago.
30? So the individual...
Well, it's 33 years ago that I sent the documents to the U.S. Congress that got it going.
It's interesting because it should have been deployed this way then, right? But somehow,
yes,
these secret combinations, and I would actually argue that the secret combination that got in the middle of identity is insurance. Would you agree or disagree with that?
I would. Yeah.
I think that the folks behind insurance, think about it. They put together a profile of an individual. Who are your family members? Who are drivers? What are vehicles? Oh, you want to link vehicles with a homeowner's policy. You want to link that with a renter's policy. You want to link, oh, and do you own it? Do you actually control it? Who's the manager? Oh, you can't insure this because it's owned in a trust. You can't do that. I mean, oh, we're going to charge you this much more. And if you don't put a device in your car to let us know where you're going, how far you drive, what the average is, how you brake, blah, 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 we're going to charge you this amount more. Oh, you can't afford that? Well, just put this device in your car and we'll cut off 30%. That is and we're not even talking about what they're doing in healthcare. which like the systems we're talking about would cut off 30 to 35% costs right out of the gate, primarily because of payments. Like just getting the payment to, okay, do you have insurance? Did we bill it? Did it get paid? Did the transact? It's a joke. It like literally can all be automated. And the systems that we're talking about can actually enable those types of things to be a reality. So Richard, it's wonderful to have you here. And I hope that your legacy, Richard came to me and he says, Mike, this was done wrong. And before I take my last breath, it has to be fixed. It has to be. You remember that, Richard? It has to be fixed.
I do, a long time ago. Yep. We're still at it.
That was 2005. The year that was, it started in 2005. I don't think we figured out the relationship between us until probably 2008 or 9, but it's been a long time. So hopefully what you're seeing, you're proud of the work that's being done based upon the guidance that you helped give so long ago. So
thank you for the progress you've been making.
I hope that when we start talking about, oh, you're welcome. I hope that when we start talking about the individual and owning their own health. So for instance, I'll give you an example around in Ethiopia. This is a good example of how the individual can actually have control of their personal data. So payments, prescriptions, meds, phones, records of phones, taxes, financials. I don't know about you, but I'm just so tired of, you go and trust an entity like a bank. You put your money in, you put your trust in their reporting systems. Like, how often have we seen just even the Bank of America come up with the wrong balances from digital assets? And then when we take what they're doing, they've told us that between now and the time Trump's going to come into presidency, they're going to be down for 3 full days. That's one of the largest banks in at least America, maybe not the world. But for a bank to say, we're going to be offline, or even other banks like Chase. I mean, if you don't keep a certain balance and you let it flip over 90 days, the accounts get closed. I mean, what happens when you've got years and years of bank records in there? You just can't access them anymore. So imagine a system where all of those transactions never go away. They're always there. And the individual can always access them. And all they have to do is keep track of some simple words, literally just 12 words. This represents 24 words, but these are dynamic words that are given to you when you get your identity. So if you just keep the 12 words, next generations and yourself, you can basically push them on. So other thoughts or comments or feedback? We got tons of things going on in the world. We got people from Mexico, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, China. I don't know where you're at. Are you in Thailand, Jay?
Entiendo.
Mr. Green, you have something you want to bring up, bud?
I've got to drop off.
You're on mute
Sorry.
still. Go ahead, Richard.
Entonces de ahí hay que agarrarnos y
Go ahead.
ver cómo la manera.
Go ahead, Mr. Green. You're
Y ya
live,
después
bud.
conversé con él.
Hello, everybody. How's it going?
Really
All
good.
good?
Cambió la postura.
Yeah.
Yo creo que es parte
Wonderful,
del
wonderful.
diálogo. Pero
So,
no es un diálogo
all these issues that we have right
porque
now,
los diputados
We're
tomaron
getting some.
Mexico,
We're hearing
manera
something in the
y
background.
fueron
You
de
hear
otra
that?
vez en la presentación
okay, let me
del
just check it
encuentro,
out very quick.
¿sí?
Yeah,
There you go.
Go ahead.
There you go.
sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we got you.
Perfect. So yeah, all the things that is going on right now between Mexico and the United States, I think that we as a community, and I always tell this as a Mexican American, we always need to be focused more into the root causes of the problems, rather than to try to point it on in something that is not the cause. Right now, Mr. Trump, and actually I do support. I'm more conservative than anything, because right now the world is into two big stages, you know, like the globalist and the persons who are more into trying to reinforce the national values of their nations, you know. So right now, that's a new world, a new balance, you know, and it has been very very serious for Mexico right now, this issue, because as the president of Mexico says, it's not only the Mexican people who are crossing the border, you know, it's mostly Central Americans and South Americans, and this problem has growing and has many causes, you know. Most of those people are escaping like bad regimes from the left and from the right, you know, like they're not only escaping communism, they're also escaping bad administrations and totalitarianism, you know, and that's something that here we in the United States, we always need to be focused in the liberty that we have here, you know, liberty of free speech and the liberty of property, you know. Sometimes we think that, or I saw it, that we think we had it for granted, but it's something that in most places in the world, they do not have it, you know, the ability to even protest, you know, or have a private property, you know. And I say from someone who, so I grow in a place that even though that they are not like completely socialist, they have a lot of this leftist mentality. And I have studied all these doctrines very profound, and they sound very romantic, but it's very dangerous, you know, like to give your liberties for a little bit of safety, you know. I think it was Benjamin Franklin who said that we was a person who give us a little bit of their own liberty for freedom do not deserve either of those, you know. I think it was Benjamin Franklin. So right now,
You just went away. We can't hear you anymore. Am I the only one that can't hear him? No, you muted. There you go. We can hear you.
but did you hear the last part or not?
No. Go ahead and restate it if you would. The last sentence.
Don't you worry.
No, just the last sentence. We heard everything else, just the last sentence.
Oh, okay. Perfect. So yeah. So right now, for example, they just invite me to a conference in Zoom with one of our senators in Mexico. She's a migrant senator trying to like mediate all this situation, because this crisis that we have here in the fentanyl and all the drugs, for example, is not only from Mexican place, you know. We have it more from all over the world, and it's more complex that we really think about it. But whatever happens, the only thing that I need to say is that we as a family, we need to be, you know, together in prayer and try to be able to find the right way to do things, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's it.
Absolutely.
Mr. Green, I have
Tell me.
Hello. Yeah, Michael and Mr. Green, I just have a question from what Mr. Green was talking about in terms of people coming across the border with no identity. How can we make people understand that? Because I don't know the complexities of it, but what I'm thinking is how, if you're at the border and if you've got no identity, this is the solution for that, to get an identity right there on the spot. Because
Well,
you could
that's
operate, right?
Well, that's a subject that we have been discussing with Michael, you know, like all these persons that, for example, most of those persons, they need to give up their identities at the border, you know. They need to give out their passports. in order for them to be able to let them cross the border. So imagine coming to a country with no identity at all,
Yeah.
like at all, And the reality right now is that millions and millions of people are working with fake IDs and paying taxes, because every time that they get paid, they pay income tax immediately. It's absurd. Those people are working, trying to work legit, trying to work right, but they don't have any means to do it. And even though for people who trying to do things the right way, it takes sometimes months or years to do it.
I think what you guys are talking about is a whole nother level of what we had imagined, though. I think what the question that Becca's bringing up, I mean, Mario, we were thinking about how do we get people that have come across already, how do we enable them to create, like we just went through and created a business that's a decentralized autonomous business, but let's say they do it out of Mexico or out of Hawaii or the Hawaiian Kingdom. And then they get a federal employer identification number to actually create the business fully legal. So this is totally compliant. And then they can open bank accounts and then they can operate. But the problem is they haven't come through a process of immigration. But what if they were adopted into one of these countries? Like literally,
Correct.
Becca, do you see what she's saying, Mr. Graham? This is a whole nother level of brilliance that I personally didn't even realize until she just asked this question. This could actually be a solution.
I think it's something that we need to do on the front line. The front line of whoever is on the front line at that moment. So yeah, it is a whole other level, but it's definitely a good solution.
Mr. Green, why don't we set up a meeting with the consulate there in your backyard? I won't be specific on which one, but let's set up a meeting with the president of the consulate there, and let's propose a solution for adoption into different ecosystems. Maybe it's the Hopis, maybe it's the Chickasaws, maybe it's the Navajos, maybe it's the Hawaiians. These are ecosystems that are within the privy and physical landmass of the United States of America, but they have their own rights and own ability to adopt people in, and therefore can grant rights to have reciprocity. They can actually have dual citizenship, so to speak, and live. Is this making sense?
No, yeah, totally.
Yes.
Because, for example, I do have the dual citizenship, and it's for me, it was, for example, a process,
Yeah.
It took 1 year, but it was a process. Not for example, if a person that is, for example, from the States, you're born here in the States, and their parents are from Mexico, they will grant it almost immediately the nationality.
Now they're getting rid of that, is one of the things I'm hearing, is they're going to remove that ability, right? Do you come?
No, from if their parents are from Mexico, it's easier for people who are born here, but their parents are from Mexico, to get their citizenship like immediately.
Right. And what they're saying is, if someone illegally comes into the U.S., has a baby, and then wants to come get citizenship through the baby's birthright nationality, they're getting rid of that
exactly
type of thing.
The anchor babies. No, that's another.
That's
another
a different
thing.
topic.
It's for the baby to have the Mexican nationality.
Okay, so let's just unpack what that question had, because for me, it just a lot of aha moments just went off. So it's one thing to help someone to come here and integrate in with identity, with finance, with credit, with business, with occupation, and all do it within the existing system above board, but they still have the nationality topic that's still out there. And what her question, and I think this is what you really meant by it, that they literally can be adopted into one of these jurisdictions that's a digital-based ecosystem and potentially have cross-border reciprocity. So they can have that dual citizenship capability. What we should do is go sit down with the consulate and see if that could be for people that wanted to comply, to see if there's actually a way to make it happen, but they have to jump through this new type of system that links a future identity with the past. And the other side of this is going to be a dear friend of mine who was actually on the last week's call. If you remember, a gentleman named Craig, he came up with a business model that was amazing, where there's also the counter side of what's going on, where we actually have a lot of criminals that have come in. But those criminals cost like, I don't know, $43,000 a year to house and feed. And so let's say that Venezuela and Argentina and Guatemala, and they just dumped, in Colombia, they just dumped all of their prisons and said, if we see you here, we're going to arrest you, but leave. You're free. Go. And so they head up here, and let's say those guys get arrested. Instead of housing them in America, we actually work with places like Mexico to actually house these prisoners, and it costs like $11,000 a year instead of $43,000 a year. But you incentivize people going. For instance, I guarantee that the prisons inside of America are better than those inside of Mexico, and probably Mexico is better than those inside of Venezuela. And so people in Venezuela are like, hey, I can actually get a warm cell and food and blah, blah, blah. I'd rather be in prison in that environment and make the wrong choices and do some of these egregious type. I don't know if people are paying attention to some of the acts that are happening, but a lot of, I guess what I'm saying is we've got to go to the consulate with solutions on not just how do people be able to stay and do something within the system in compliance, but at the same time, come up with a solution around how do we actually drive down the costs and disincent the alignment of, or really aligning the intent, so to speak. So it basically helps people to do what's right. Go ahead.
Michael, wouldn't there have to be some way to vet these people coming across? Because it's one thing to have a legal immigrant, but what about, like you said, all the criminals that are coming across? You wouldn't want to put them through the system without vetting them first, wouldn't you?
Yeah, that's just it. We've got to come up with a way to link the physical identities with a digital identity that can cryptographically be secured. Because, for instance, the two people in society that are actually lost are immigrants and prisoners. Believe it or not, they struggle to track. Even though somebody that gets out of jail, he or she is on parole, they struggle to track that. And I'm not talking about putting a bracelet on them, but they really do struggle to track that. As in a prior life, we actually managed all this stuff. It was called Secure Alert, and we could actually see where they're going. It's a crazy centralized system, but decentrally, you can actually manage identity and payments and all of that stuff with giving privacy and accountability, but you've got to determine whether they're criminal or not. To your point, Danielle, I mean, I don't know what all the answers are. I just know that what Becca just asked in a question opened up a whole nother level of thinking. And maybe Mr. Green was already on that same page, but in my mind's eye, had never thought about it that way. And I think it's brilliant.
Yeah,
And just
actually,
another thing as well. Oh, sorry, Mr. Green, you go.
yeah, thank you. So yeah, actually that was the idea with like a credit union to create like a bank that they can use, because here in the state you need a social security number to open a real bank account. There are many digital banks that they are not secure at all.
But I totally get the banking. I totally get the banking and the finance. But what Becca's driving at is identity and immigration, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, perfect.
And if you recall, team, I think 3 weeks ago we had Josh on the call, and he was talking about, like, he was on the front line for the military of the US, and he spoke about his experience. Do you remember that?
His was around voting, primarily around voting and immigration.
Oh,
and
okay. And
identity.
I just remember him mentioning that he was on the front line at in the military or something. So that's kind of where it sparked from. But yeah, it's definitely a whole another level, Michael. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
Well, in that same case, for example, just hard data. For example, here in Texas, 42% is Hispanic, 39% is white, 9% is black, and then the rest. Like
Wow.
from India, from Pakistan, from China, from all Asia. So that's one thing. The other thing is, I don't know from other parts of Latin America, but for example, I will say like between 70 or 90% of all Mexicans that come here just to work, they want to come back eventually to their homeland. They want to be able to pay taxes and to have some retirement and have, like, for example, like all the things that Social Security will grant you, like healthcare, So, for example, I don't know if you know that it's way cheaper to get yourself treated in Mexico, stay there for a couple of weeks, and then come back here to the States rather than to do it here in the States. And also, for example, all the quote unquote digital nomads that they are in Mexico, or that US American citizens that they live permanently there in Mexico, like completely illegal, there are more like 2 million, or no, I don't know how many millions per person out there, that they're chilling, working here and like remotely,
You know what I
So
find?
if we to facilitate like both, it will be such an amazing thing, like, because right now here in the States, there are 38 million Mexicans. Or it's not like 2 million, 5 million, 10 million, like 38, almost 40 millions.
38 million Mexicans, and that's not counting all of the others that are literally from other parts of South America. And that's why I think if we look at this from a melting pot of we're all brothers and sisters on one amazing earth, right? And digitally, this earth can be managed, but we have to use systems that are standardized and aligned. And when we look at what's happened historically, like we have little dotted lines, like just look at this map for a second, okay? So we have all these little dotted lines that are these imaginary lines. Some of them follow rivers, some of them are just made up, some of them are based upon a degrees, but this line in particular right here, I know that a bunch of folks from Utah, even before Utah was made a state, went down there and actually helped to create this line. 100 years prior to that, it was a different line. Like all of it came all the way up here. And when we start understanding cultures and people and indigenous roots, the Mayans, the Incas, the Chickasaws, the Cherokees, even down here in Panama, we have the Kuna Indians that are still here, right here. They're still sovereign, and they've never been controlled and oppressed, all in this environment right here. But what I'm saying is these are indigenous people, but everyone is indigenous somewhere. And so if we understand that we're one world and one people, and we look at this from an alignment around really a union, that we're all together, and it's a historical thing around the condor, the hummingbird, the quetzalcoatl, and the eagle all coming together in a union where we can all be one people per se. So that'd be interesting if we approach this from a standpoint of, let's say, for instance, let's say that we can actually prove that the Mayans down here that have history, etc., actually right here on this Yucatan Peninsula, you have Chichen Itza, Tulum, Xcaret, and these are actual physical pyramids that are just like those that are found over in Egypt. And when you start looking at a lot of the people, how could they get all the way on the other side of the world, build the same things, and all of it linked together? My point in saying all of this is those same individuals from here, why can't people become a citizen of Brazil? And Brazil have a connection to the US, and therefore the immigration process is simplified. Or take it a step further, and let's say right up here in this area within Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Utah, this Four Corners area where you have the Hopis or the Navajos. And what's to stop someone from, let's say this Yucatan Peninsula from being adopted into the family within the Hopis and then having the ability to actually physically be present in the States? Is this just a new concept to me and everyone else has already got this and assumed this a long time ago? Is this making sense?
Well,
Yeah, that makes sense. I literally think if you're at the border or something and you don't have an ID, you don't have anything, I don't know who I am, I don't know where I'm going, I don't know what I'm doing. Here's your digital identity. Now you're identified in the digital world.
And that digital world has jurisdiction within different environments. Let's go ahead and keep going with that Hopi one. So let's say the Hopis say they're actually running governance system around identity, digital passports, whether it's birth certificates, adoption, so they get adopted in, which that's actually what this was right here. She was getting adopted into that environment, which is a sacred, beautiful connection. And the way to do it is not just everyone massively flows through. It's a spiritual thing. They feel who these people are, a driver's license, a death certificate. But that identity can enable them to physically be in a different jurisdiction that normally they couldn't jump through. This creates a solution to the mass population exodus that was just real. It's continuing to happen. I mean, there are so many people flooding in right now because they're worried that Trump gets in, they can't actually get through the border. So I never thought of it this way. I'm just so grateful that my eyes are being open to what you guys have already seen for so long. I've just looked at it from a different angle. So, Mr. Green, you were saying something. What was it?
Yeah, I'm totally agree with all that. There's a way that we can help all these people that, in simple words, they're just escaping totalitarianism.
Yeah.
And they're escaping famine. Yes, of course, there should be some of them. There are criminals, and of course, they do not know any better and whatever. And we also need to be very careful about that, because I totally agree with that. But the major players, the ones who are really ruling the game and really doing the really bad stuff, are not those peasants. Are not those peones, peons. They're not those people. The big dogs are in another whole different level,
I think we all innately know what's right and what's wrong and what's acceptable in society and what's not. And I think in time, we've made the choice as humanity to allow this to happen, and we're going to have to deal with the consequences of solving for it. I'm not even talking about the nuclear threats and the presidential stuff. I'm just talking about in society, but we also should be able to live in peace as individuals. And it doesn't matter where you're born, what color your skin is. We all bleed the same way. We all breathe the same way. And we all live on the same earth. We don't have these imaginary lines that are just fictitiously dotted all around. And not just that, but they're taken based upon control. Like these lines are taken and created. Like this line right here was actually held by a group, and it continues. Like certain people came down here. I won't be specific. I know the details, but I won't be specific of how it actually happened. But it's like, why can't we come together and I'm not saying that people that are here illegally shouldn't go back through the process. I'm saying we need to give them a way to be able to go back through the process in the futuristic systems. And the question is, will those that are in charge actually care about what these futuristic systems are? For instance, this is a document that was created that basically is targeted for Elon. and the folks with the Department of Government Efficiency, which is actually not a formal government environment, but it goes through 30 different reasons why the systems that we're talking about are actually the right systems for humanity, for America, to actually drive down costs, increase productivity, increase accountability, increase trust by adopting this new system for America. It was built for America even before any of the elections, before any of this, or, whether it's identity, whether it's businesses, whether it's assets. But the thing that was a real big aha is immigration and being adopted into a tribe that we're actually, for instance, if we look at this map, I bet you if we actually did 23andMe or Ancestry or DNA sequencing, I'll bet you that the bloodlines down in this area are connected up to blood that is in this area, and vice versa. You could even dig further into some of these other environments. We are all one, but can through a legal adoption process, and that is the aha. It's a legal adoption process. Can they actually get the ability to have a fast track on immigration? That would just be massive. And not only that, but now they're leapfrogged into the future financial system, identity system, land management system, asset management system, dispute resolution system. And not only that, but one of the members brought up this concept around if people are doing wrong things and they need to be imprisoned, we can actually we can pay Mexico to put them in a Mexican prison for 11 grand instead of 43 grand in America, and everybody wins. Mexico's driving revenue. The people managing the prisons are driving revenue. The people that are actually in the prisons. I mean, I saw, and I'm not even going to say how I watched this, but there was an individual from Venezuela that came up, targeted this woman, raped her, killed her, and then thinks this stuff is just normal, and all he gets is life in prison. For me, it's like, that's not enough. If he really did that, he shouldn't be on earth. Why should, anyways, I don't want to get all political on why. I personally believe that, whether you castrate them or whether and if it's death, it's death. I mean, and that's a whole nother process. The point that I'm driving at is I think that there can be a dispute resolution process that can be automated using technology in a digital way. And we can't solve the same problems using the same tools of the past. And I really believe that what the digital world enables is the tools of the future to actually give people privacy, which is a human right, the right to travel, which is a human right, and then the adoption of these new systems through an adoption system. What I mean by that is the usage of a system through being adopted. And that's what, this last 20 minutes has just been a huge light. So thank you. And I guess it's why we come together and just report out and ask questions. And wow. Any other thoughts or feedback?
Yeah, I'm excited about this. It goes back to what I said at the very beginning, that the technology, not yours,
Exactly,
God's technology
exactly.
can solve all these problems. Look at how backed up they are at the processing centers for immigration at the borders. They can't handle it. Each person could be processed in what, minutes?
Yeah. They download Vanuatu Life, Tuvalu Life, Fiji Life, Guatemala Life, Argentina Life, Mexican Life. They download wherever they're from. They basically go and validate an identity physically with them. So it's like their face, their finger, they're cryptographically embedding that. And then they get a name, they get an adoption environment, they pay a fee, they transact, and it could be nominal, but what it's doing is it's actually building a reputation for them. And then we can help them through a process, because we're all here to love one another, not to oppress, not to control, because this is just another form of control, is saying you have to leave, even though I personally know, for instance, this last week, there was a gal, not from any of the jurisdictions that we've mentioned, but she came over from China and adds tons of value. went and got master's degrees, maybe a PhD. Actually, she got a PhD, and then is doing crazy stuff with, we talk about the specific union stuff, but doing crazy stuff within adding value of connecting because of what she was exposed to there. And yet, even though she came through the doors the right way, she may be suspected of being a spy or doing other things that are like, are you kidding? How do you even come up with this? You got 25 million people that just walked across the border. You didn't vaccinate. I'm not saying you should vaccinate anybody, but you didn't even verify. By the way, I disagree with vaccinations, let's just make that clear. So
Me too.
you didn't verify them. You didn't identify them. You just release them and then give them something that they didn't necessarily sacrifice or earn. And we all know that through sacrificing, we actually learn and grow. A long time ago, I learned this lesson, and I think I may have done it wrong too much. The pendulum swings too far to the other side. I was like, I want my kids to struggle. I want my kids to sacrifice. I don't want to give them anything. I don't want them to be entitled. And I think from me being so concerned about that over here, I didn't think about, well, maybe there's another side to it around teaching and mentoring and time. And, there's a fine balance of how do you actually raise balance. And it's actually not me that's figured this out. It's my better half. But I guess what I'm driving at is we all need to struggle and sacrifice. And I think the errors that there's a reason there's a problem with all of this is how many of us on this call are struggling with basic things, whether it's at the gas pump or whether it's at the grocery store or the power bills or the insurance stuff. And we're just talking operating in normal lifetime, not even massive war, not even famine, not even pestilence, not even, the next pandemic. We're living in normal world, and gas prices aren't even crazy low, and maybe some of us are thinking, well, we just think it up because we don't do it. No, it's a mathematical issue. When you inject amounts of money like they're injecting, not just in the population, but on credit cards with people that haven't earned it, that value of that dollar buys less. And that's the real thing that's going on here. It's a form of economic realities of inflation through injecting money into the system. But that's also how you get out of debt and stop the financial issues of a century ago or a decade ago, is you actually dilute and inflate through the debt. So it's a game that these secret combinations are playing when we talk about, reserves and banks and public dollars that are created and all these other things. But what's been very eye-opening is how technology can actually, if it's intelligently organized, can actually be a solution to a lot of the problems that humanity is facing. So
I think most, Michael, to be quite honest, I think most, as long as the immigrants come across can be vetted, that would be my number one concern, to make sure that they're vetted before they're granted any type of status. But I think this technology can resolve so many things. By the way, one thing that wasn't mentioned tonight is, I don't know if anybody read this, but in Europe, the government, I believe, is speaking to all the big businesses and asking them to prepare for war and the supply chains in the event of war, so that people can get the basic essentials. So they're asking the big companies, the big corporations, to organize themselves in a way that they'll be able to get to what people, the base. Just read that today a couple of times in two different.
Yeah, the warning signs are massive. I didn't want to focus a lot of our time on those things, but you're so spot on that that's a reality of what's happening. But I'm really blown away at just the basic ability to, because even before this call, I spoke with my other half, my better half, and said, hey, we need to write a little bio on each individual because there was an approval to get adopted into an ecosystem, but we need to actually have a bio on them. And it's a very serious process around getting adopted in. And, you know, it's not just photos and bios and new names and validation, but it's also a verification of someone that you know, right? And so the hard part around some of these immigration issues are those relationships aren't there. But I think if that's actually where we focus, for instance, next week we have a meeting with 900 foster families here in Utah that can actually be the first recipients of those Tesla automobiles for $199 a month. And so there's some, I mean, think about it. You get a car for $199 a month. You don't have to jump through all the garbage credit stuff. You basically, because they're a part of this membership association, 900 foster families. For those of you that are not aware, I grew up in foster families when I was young. So from 9 all the way up to like 16. And it was a eye-opening experience. I was very lucky. I was a gentleman named that was an LA County Sheriff officer actually went and got his foster license. But I remember back, you know, we're talking about basic things of struggling. And I remember he took me to the store and we bought new clothes, and I had never really done that before. I didn't know what that was like. And I was just remember the gratitude of being able to have a new shirt that was like, you know, this is. And so one of the way that we got into these foster homes is actually through supercars that are connecting between Utah and Arizona and Texas, and then linking in and helping these kids to believe in themselves, helping the families to know that the work that they're doing is so valuable. But if you think about it, these are all known entities. I mean, to be a foster family, you have to get pretty vetted, but you also have a cash flow to a point. And I'm not saying they're rolling in money, but when you look at it from another side, credit is one thing, identity is actually more important. Well, we have to start with identity to then get the credit. I'm blabbing. I know there's a lot of folks that we're over on time, but this has just been an epiphany for me. So thank you, Becca, for just asking such a wise questions. Mr. Green, we really need to follow up on this, and maybe you know, some meetings with the consulate and some actions behind it. It's time. So, but I don't know.
Of course.
Okay. Well, anybody else have anything to say before we ask Susan to say her final words? Margaret, are you here? Do you want to say anything before we go? No. Well, Susan, if you can hear us, if you would wrap us up, that would be greatly appreciated.
Okay, well, thanks. Gracious Heavenly Father, thank you for all of your blessings during the season of Thanksgiving. We are grateful for the opportunities to gather tonight and for all the work being done to make our world a better place to live. Give the leaders in each of our countries' government the wisdom to bring peace during this time of uncertainty and turmoil. And please continue to watch over us and keep us safe from evil throughout the holiday season until we meet again. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen. Amen. Amen, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving, and we will see you in a week in December.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks,
What's that?
everyone.